Powdered milk. Powdered milk exists because regular milk has the survival instincts of a doomed movie character. Fresh milk spoils quickly, but removing the moisture allows it to last far longer without refrigeration. The dry powder can later be mixed with water to recreate milk again, which feels slightly unnatural the first time you see it happen. Powdered milk became useful in military supplies, remote areas, and emergency storage because it preserves nutrients that are difficult to store otherwise. It may never fully replace fresh milk emotionally, but survival food is usually focused more on practicality than emotional healing.
Honey. Honey is one of the few foods on Earth that practically refuses to expire. Its natural chemistry creates an environment where bacteria struggle to survive, allowing it to remain edible for astonishing lengths of time. Ancient honey discovered in tombs has reportedly still been safe to eat, which means honey outlives not only people, but occasionally entire civilizations. Beyond sweetness, it provides quick energy and even has antibacterial properties useful for wound care. Bees accidentally created one of the greatest survival foods in history, while humans still argue online about pineapple on pizza.
Salted fish. Salted fish became essential long before refrigeration because fresh fish spoils with incredible enthusiasm. By covering fish heavily in salt, people could draw out moisture and preserve it for long journeys or difficult winters. Entire coastal economies once depended on this method to feed distant populations. The result was durable, protein-rich, and intensely salty food that could survive conditions fresh fish never could. Eating it sometimes required soaking for hours first, which is probably humanity's earliest example of needing to prepare food emotionally before consuming it. Pickled foods. Pickled foods preserve vegetables through acidity, turning ordinary cucumbers and cabbage into survival food with attitude. By storing them in vinegar or salty brine, people created an environment where harmful bacteria struggle to grow. Sailors once relied on pickled foods during long voyages because they helped prevent nutrient deficiencies when fresh produce disappeared. Pickling also dramatically changes flavor, which matters more than people realize. After weeks of bland survival meals, one crunchy pickle can briefly convince the brain that life is improving again. Survival ration bars. Survival ration bars are engineered with the emotional warmth of emergency instructions. These dense blocks are packed with calories and designed to survive heat, cold, rough handling, and years of storage. They are commonly found in lifeboats and disaster kits because they remain stable under conditions where normal food would fail completely. The flavor is intentionally simple, though simple occasionally feels like a polite way of saying technically edible. Still, when real emergencies happen, taste becomes far less important than reliable calories. Wild edible plants. Wild edible plants represent one of humanity's oldest survival skills. Long before grocery stores existed, people survived by learning which leaves, berries, roots, and nuts were safe to eat. That knowledge often meant the difference between survival and accidentally discovering poison the hard way. In emergency situations, edible plants can provide nutrients long after stored food runs out. Of course, confidently identifying random plants without proper knowledge is also a fantastic way to turn survival training into a medical emergency. Jerky. Jerky is basically meat that survived dehydration and came back stronger. Thin strips of meat are salted and tried until bacteria no longer find the environment welcoming. Different cultures develop their own versions over time, turning jerky into one of the world's oldest portable protein sources. It became especially useful for hunters, travelers, and survivalists because it lasts far longer than fresh meat without refrigeration. The only downside is that some jerky requires so much chewing, it feels less like eating and more like a test of jaw commitment. Dried grains. Dried grains helped build civilizations because humans discovered that tiny seeds could quietly prevent entire populations from starving. Rice, wheat, oats, and corn can remain edible for years if stored correctly. Unlike fresh food, grains patiently wait in storage without demanding attention every 3 days. They are inexpensive, compact, and capable of feeding large groups over long periods. Of course, surviving entirely on plain rice for months may eventually cause a person to develop extremely emotional feelings towards seasoning. Beans and legumes. Beans and legumes became survival staples because they somehow managed to be cheap, nutritious, and nearly immortal all at once.
Lentils, chickpeas, and black beans store well for years while providing protein and fiber that are difficult to replace during food shortages. Across history, they repeatedly appeared during famines and difficult winters because they were dependable when other foods disappeared. Their only real weakness is preparation time. Dry beans often require soaking and cooking, which means they are excellent survival food unless your survival plan somehow forgot about water or fire.
Energy bars. Energy bars are what happen when an entire meal gets compressed into something barely larger than a phone. They are designed to deliver quick calories during hiking, emergencies, and situations where sitting down for dinner would be wildly inconvenient. Most contain a mix of sugar, grains, fats, and protein packed into dense little rectangles. They are practical and portable, though some have textures suspiciously similar to flavored drywall. Still, when energy drops and options disappear, people become surprisingly grateful for anything edible that fits inside a pocket.
Canned foods. Canned foods are proof that humans looked at fresh food expiring and decided to trap dinner inside metal forever. The idea became popular because it worked almost unbelievably well. Vegetables, soups, beans, and meat could survive for years without refrigeration as long as the seals stayed intact. During emergencies, canned food becomes incredibly valuable because it is already cooked and protected from bacteria. Of course, there is always that one can sitting in the back of the cabinet, old enough to have witnessed several elections, yet somehow still technically edible. In survival situations, that level of durability starts feeling less concerning and more impressive.
Freeze-dried foods. Freeze-dried foods look like someone removed a soul from a meal and stored the memory of it in a pouch. The process freezes food first, then slowly removes the moisture while keeping much of the original shape and flavor intact. That is why freeze-dried strawberries still resemble strawberries instead of tiny pieces of sadness. These foods became popular with astronauts, hikers, and survivalists because they weigh very little and last for decades. Add water, wait a few minutes, and suddenly the food returns to life like it was only pretending to be dead the whole time. Dehydrated foods. Dehydrated foods are what happen when humans discover that removing water solves a surprising number of problems. Fruits shrink, meat hardens, vegetables wrinkle, and somehow all of it becomes more useful for survival. This preservation method has existed for centuries because it is simple and reliable. Long before modern technology, people were already drying food under the sun and hoping rain would not ruin everything halfway through. Dehydrated foods are lightweight and easy to store, although eating them without enough water nearby can feel like your mouth is slowly negotiating surrender. MREs. MREs were designed for moments when cooking is impossible and comfort has officially left the conversation. The military created these meals ready to eat so soldiers could eat almost anywhere without kitchens, stoves, or common happiness. Inside each package are sealed meals engineered to survive rough conditions for years. Some even come with flameless heaters, because apparently humanity reached the point where food can heat itself while people still forget their passwords daily. MREs are practical, calorie-dense, and dependable. Though after eating too many of them in a row, people tend to develop a very personal relationship with the word constipation. Hardtack. Hardtack is a biscuit that seems personally offended by the concept of softness. Made from little more than flour, water, and salt, it was carried by sailors and soldiers because it could survive almost indefinitely. The problem was actually eating it. Hardtack became so hard over time that people often soaked it in coffee, soup, or whatever liquid was available just to avoid breaking teeth. Yet, despite its reputation, it kept countless people alive during wars and long voyages. It may not win awards for flavor, but survival food rarely asks for your emotional approval. Pemmican. Pemmican is one of the smartest survival foods ever created, even if describing it sounds slightly alarming. Indigenous peoples of North America combined dried meat with rendered fat and sometimes berries to create a compact food packed with calories and nutrients. The result lasted a long time and provided enough energy for travel through brutal environments. Explorers later adopted it because carrying large amounts of food becomes much easier when the food itself weighs less than regret. Pemmican may not look luxurious, but in freezing conditions, high-calorie meat paste starts sounding surprisingly reasonable.